Okay, I'm Celeste.
And I'm Danielle, and we are the founders of the Somatica Institute of Sex and Relationship Coaching. And in the Somatica Institute, we train coaches in the field of sex and relationship, and we offer you to get all the way to certification and become certified coaches. What's amazing about the training is that you get to really practice all the tools of Somatica. It's very experiential. The work is mutually vulnerable and connected. And it's a wonderful place to practice with true intimacy every day, and then also help offer it to your clients. I do want to say that the training is both for personal growth and professional development. And no matter what, your life will never going to be the same after you take the training. So we hope that you'll decide to join us after this webinar.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're talking about true intimacy today. And I guess I just want to start out by saying we call ourselves sex and relationship coaches. But when I think about people coming into my office, the eyes on the prize that I always have is that they get to experience what I think of as true intimacy, the full acceptance of themselves and the ability to be seen and accepted by their partner and the ability to be emotionally supported by each other. And I'm always sort of trying to help people live a little bit in the real world. I'll never forget this one couple who came in and they kept referring to each other as future Steve and future Nancy. And I was like, who are these people, future Steve and future Nancy? And these were the people that they felt that they would become sometime in the future. And when they became those people, they would really like each other and have a great relationship together. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know. I don't think future Steve and Nancy exists. Like, what about this person sitting across from you on the couch right now? Do you like them at all? So I think it's really about, there is transformation that can be done, but so much of helping people find intimacy is about being with the person you are and the person your partner is in the present moment. I think the word intimacy gets confused with so many things. It gets confused with romance, familiarity, commitment. I think it's also just used as a euphemism for sex so that people don't even have to say the word sex. And I think in our training, we teach people the nuts and bolts of true intimacy and how to practice those on a day-to-day basis. But today I feel like we really want to talk about the paradigm shift that is required to change from kind of the paradigm that we're given out in the world to more of a paradigm of what is intimacy and how can I have that in my relationship?
It is a wonderful question. What is intimacy? And I think there's people look at intimacy in different ways. And many times what we get a lot of the societal messages is, hey, you just want to go, you're going to go and just get married. And that's where you do, or get in a long-term commitment relationship. And that's where you do intimacy. But actually we don't get a lot of tools of what is intimacy. And we think that they're just like having the structure will do the work. Like that's what you do. You get married and then what? And how do you develop this intimacy? Do you just keep going with day-to-day chores? Like how many things do you share of yourself? What do you don't say about yourself? What are the conversations you're supposed to have? And really the how to develop intimacy is not something that we'll learn anywhere.
Yeah, I think in our society, we kind of treat relationships as some kind of goal. Like we're not thinking of it as an ongoing connection to be nurtured. I was talking to one of my clients recently and I have all these friends who are married and they never talk about like the challenges in their relationship. And he's like, I know that there's challenges because half of them end up divorcing. It's almost like we think, okay, I got married or I got my relationship, I got my commitment, and now I'm done. And I think we focus so much on the structure and we lose the opportunity for intimacy. It's like the goal is the structure instead of how do I show up on a daily basis as myself in a relationship with another human being who is different from me and not made for me, like we like to think in our society. And so how do we navigate this dual drive that I think all humans have to self-actualize, to be truly themselves out in the world, and to stay lovingly connected to a partner, multiple partners, to other human beings in emotional and erotic intimacy?
When I think about it, I think about what does it mean to be truly yourself? What does it mean? And I think a lot of people, like we many times don't spend a lot of time thinking, well, we do because that's what we do. But many people don't spend a lot of time thinking about what does it mean to be truly yourself? Because there's a way that we kind of move in the world and do our habitual selves being there. Like we react and we respond and we don't always sit and think, what are the reactions inside me that make me respond like that? So when we talk about truly ourselves, we don't just look at our reactive selves, we're actually looking at ourselves in a way that we start to grow and understand who we are and start to respond in a more conscious way to the world. Because I think sometimes it really is hard to develop true intimacy if two people are just reacting to each other all the time and not like taking time to check their triggers and then what is it that they want and what are the desires. So I'm just responding here to the idea of what is the truly yourself part is.
So in terms of whether the program is focused mostly on romantic relationships, I think it's focused on emotional and erotic intimacy. And we have found that when people learn the tools of especially emotional intimacy, that they get better connections with everyone in their lives. We hear them say, my better connections with my siblings, my parents, my children. A lot of people say they have much better because they have a better idea of how attachment works and how do you work with people around boundaries and acceptance. So I do feel like, in answer to your question, Trish, intimacy, one part of intimacy is vulnerability. And if you think about like the beginnings of a romantic relationship or an emotionally connected and erotically connected relationship, I feel like there's this process that we go through where we're slowly like allowing ourselves to open our vulnerability to other people to the extent that we're capable of doing that. And it's a process to learn how to be truly vulnerable. And we're like, starting to show ourselves, we're starting to show our feelings of love or desire. And we're also, I think we like sort of pacing ourselves. If I open to this other person, are they going to open to me? How much do I open? How much do I let them in? How much do I let myself rely on them, right? There's this whole constant negotiation and navigation. And it starts at the beginning of relationship, but it continues all the way through. I think one of the biggest fallacies of intimacy is that it's going to stay the same for a lifetime. And I see so many clients coming into my office, like being so mad at each other that, why aren't you like the person that I married? Why aren't you the exact same person that I married or got in a relationship with 20 years ago or 15 years ago? And wouldn't it be sad if we were all exactly the same people that we were 20 years ago? But how do we make space for those changes and transformations in ourselves and each other? And then stay in this emotional connection with each other and stay in erotic connection if we want to, because sometimes we don't. Like things change how deeply emotionally connected you want to be with somebody, how deeply erotically connected you want to be with somebody, change over time. And we focus so much on the structure has to stay the same or we have failed, as opposed to like, how do I stay in intimate connection with this other human being? If I want to do that over a lifetime, there has to be room for transformation.
And a commitment to true intimacy really means a commitment to like your own, to looking inside yourself and checking who you are every minute and bringing gentleness and also commitment and self-love and also commitment to looking who your partner is and then who they are, how are they changing and forming. And again, hopefully people do change. Otherwise, we will be eternally like in a relationship with a toddler. Like people do change and do grow and do evolve. And when I mean look more into themselves, become softer with who they are and their needs, become softer with each other. So when I'm thinking about the beauty of growing intimacy together with partners and with your children and with your parents, if that's possible, or anyone else in the world, is that the willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to share. And we always kind of look how much we want to share, how much risk we're willing to take and be vulnerable and share those intimate parts of ourselves that we are maybe grew up to feel like they're not okay, maybe grew up to feel ashamed of, or maybe we grew up to feel like we're not good enough. And in intimacy, being able to share those parts and ask for support in loving those parts is kind of like the key of this yummy, loving place to come home to. I think that's like when I think about intimacy, it's like a wonderful relationship that's founded in intimacy. It's a wonderful place to come home to.
And when I think of my work with clients, I'm always trying to maximize the level of intimate, loving connection they can have, emotional, erotic connection they can have, and minimize the pain and trauma. So I'm not focused on the structure, I'm focused on the connection. And so the other day I was working with this couple and I said, it might actually work a lot better for the two of you if you didn't live in the same house. They've had times when they lived together and had times when they didn't. But we have this idea in our culture that like love is an escalator. And if you move in with somebody, that's like a step. And if you get married to somebody, that's like a step. And if you get babies with somebody, that's like a step, as opposed to love is like a flowing experience that has ups and downs, and that different structures will be more conducive to creating more love and connection and affection. So I said it might, and I just put out ideas. I'm not saying what anyone should or shouldn't do, but I said, but she's constantly triggered because he has a lot less time and energy for intimate connection than she does. And every time she's constantly like monitoring him. Does he want me? Does he love me? Is he paying attention to me? Is he including me? And she's agitated all the time and very frustrated because he's not giving her the amount of attention that she needs. And so I'm thinking, maybe if you lived in different houses, you wouldn't always be focused on, is he giving you what you need? And you could focus on your friends and your family when you're not together. And then when you are together, it can be much more like special time, romantic time, focused time for your intimate connection. And like, she was very upset that I put that idea out there, but I was like, I get it. If you definitely want to live together, but let's notice the level to which you're hyper vigilant and agitated about the fact that he doesn't have as much time and attention for intimacy as you do. So we're like dealing with this discrepancy. And I'm just looking like, how can we maximize the joy and connection and minimize the pain and challenge so that more intimacy and more love and more sex and more joy are available in each couple or throuple or however many people are involved that I'm working with?
And when we think about this flow of intimacy, it feels like a flow to me on the very limbic body, embodied process. It does require kind of like willingness to be flexible and willingness to think outside of the box and willingness to not stick to the very societal defined structure and willingness to see, oh, what will work for us for this thing? And then life changes and new things show up. So what works for us for this new thing? And I work a lot with couples and helping them really find those like moments to moments, how to engage and be more and more in intimacy. And sometimes I see couples go to the place that they realize that the partner that they got married to 20 years ago is not exactly how they imagined them to be anymore. And they did not do this work of keep growing and keep attaching. And I see people like really heartbroken when they get to this moment and feeling, okay, like now we need to get divorced or it's not working anymore. And we try to maximize it. And even in those moments, I'm always trying to help people see how they can shift their relationship to something like, whatever people have together, it's not going away, even if they shift to a different paradigm of relationship. Because when you're divorcing someone, they're not vanishing from your life. Many times you have shared children, shared assets, shared memories, other ways that you can shift the relationship into something that has even more love for each other, because you get to see how you are maybe not meant to live together in the same household and have a shared bank accounts, but other ways that you can still stay in some sort of intimacy and cherish each other for your contribution to each other's lives.
So when I think about the day-to-day of true intimacy and how we bring ourselves into connection with another person, I do think it requires a good deal of self-awareness. Like we actually have to know, what are my needs? What are my boundaries? What am I feeling right now? What am I capable of handling and not capable of handling? And when we go into communication with our partner about those things, I think so often it's if people are talking to each other and there's some sort of like agitation in the connection, it's like immediately, let's solve the problem. Let's fix it. Let me throw away the things that I need. Let me cross my boundaries. Let me go beyond my capacity, right? Like there's this panic that happens instead of just, okay, let's sit down. Like maybe we don't have a conclusion right now to what's going on, but let's sit down and have a conversation about what I'm feeling, what I'm needing, what you're feeling, what you're needing, who you are in relationship to whatever the particular challenges that we're working on, and what wounds it touches inside of you, and how we can empathize with each other. Like, how do we create a conversation where both of our whole selves or all of our whole selves get to be there? And we don't make snap decisions, and we don't make decisions in the middle of trigger. We actually are able to talk about, ooh, I'm really triggered and agitated right now, and that we can be vulnerable in those moments. We can cry together. We don't just try to think of our relationship challenges as problems to solve, but as moments to deepen intimacy with the other person. And so it requires a lot of self-awareness and requires a lot of empathy and a lot of room for the fact that people are different and they have different needs and feelings and wounds. And you can't just say, why is that bugging you so much? You have to actually say, why is that bugging you so much? What's going on there? Let's really talk about it. I want to know you. I want to know you.
Which is really beautiful, because in conflict, many times when there are triggers in conflict, and like we go so many times to this like division, like me against them, or like it becomes those like two sides of like a war, and who gets to win. And instead we want to help people, you, our clients, to look at it as, wow, they are just different than us. They probably don't want to harm me. Most likely they just want to be heard and seen and expressed. And I want to be heard and seen and expressed. So how can we listen in an empathetic way to see who they are? Because if we remove the immediate impulse to think that someone has to win, and instead we go into like, how do we connect? So we call it like, it is about connecting as opposed to protecting. That can create such an amazing opportunity to just deepen both your self-knowledge, because if you start to look and listen to your partner and look at what they're saying, you might actually learn something about yourself too. In the face of being different than them, it can expand who you are, and it can also create such a beautiful way to know who they are, not as you thought that they were 15 or 10 years ago, but who you think that they are, or learning who they are now.
I think this is a great question. What is the connection between intimacy and trauma? So when we experience trauma around intimate connection, we start to look at the world in more of a black and white kind of a way, and we start scanning for certain threats. So we start thinking, oh, this horrible thing happened to me. This traumatic thing happened to me when I was a child. This is not a conscious thought. This is our unconscious running the show. We can make it conscious, but this is how it works. And then you start looking, like I was talking about the woman in the couple who's always, I'm not really special to him. She's so scared she's not really special to him because she had trauma in her childhood around specialness with her father. Sometimes she was super special. Sometimes she wasn't special at all. He would sort of come and go in that way. So she was always looking at her partner. Am I special? Am I special? Am I special? Meanwhile, his trauma is more around acceptance. So every time she's criticizing him for not treating her special enough, he's always looking like, she thinks I'm horrible. His trauma says, oh, she doesn't accept me who I am. I can never be who I am in this relationship. And you can see their traumas get into this yucky vortex together, right? And to unwind that and to see, actually, these two people deeply love and care about each other, but their traumas are interacting in a way that makes both of them think the other person is kind of trying to torture them. So it's really about sort of seeing, what are my underlying traumas, and what are they causing me? What threats are they causing me to scan for? And what are my partner's underlying traumas, and what threats are they causing them to scan for? And how are the ways that we're interacting exacerbating those? Or when you do good, coaching around it, or you start to transform around it, how do we unwind that? And we start saying, how can we better take care of each other in the face of the traumas that each one of us has? That's when the healing can happen around trauma as a result of intimate relationships. And it's, oh, this person gets that I get really scared when I don't feel special. Oh, this person gets that I feel really scared when I don't feel accepted for who I am. Now we can start taking care of each other and trusting each other to go to much deeper levels of intimacy when we learn how to care for the particular histories and wounds around trauma that we have.
Which reminds me that what I love about what we developed in Somatica is this like such a beautiful, yummy dance between attachment and individuation, and between holding your own inner child and holding your own hurts and traumas, and at the same time asking someone without demanding it, without requiring, without have to have it, but with an invitation. Will you help me, support me in holding my inner child? Will you help me by listening to me? Will you help me or support me by loving me in that particular way that I need, without necessarily, like when we start to demand it, it creates so much tension. You're supposed to know that I want you to look at me in that particular way that turns me on, or you're supposed to know that you need to do the dishes this way. It actually comes from the dishes to the bedroom. It's one flow, those things. And instead start to ask, for example, I feel I was not accepted for my body. I was not accepted for my body growing up. So it will really help me if you look at me with desire. It will make me feel so turned on if you do that. And then really not expect it and be upset when it's not happening, but really help my partners to see that's something that will be there for me. And if they're not able to do it, not to be so mad at them that they're not able to do that. Have my own resources to deal with it and see, like, where do I find those resources? So there's a great question here. I've been learning about attachment theory with my current partner, and we both have become more aware of our individual insecure attachment styles. But my question is, what do you do with this information? And maybe what I want to say here is that knowing is the first step. Of course, it's not everything, because we can use this knowledge to shame ourselves. We can use this knowledge to feel not good enough. But if we take this knowledge and we start to see, there's the title of insecure attachment. And so knowing your pattern can first bring compassion, and then also can bring tools to this negotiation, because most of the time there are two people in the same relationship, if there are two people or whatever relationship that you have in this specific dynamic. There's someone who is a little bit more wavy and someone who's a little bit more islandy. Two people are not exactly the same. And in every dynamic, at some time, someone would want to have more connection and someone would need to have more space. And knowing your tendencies, knowing that's something that's yours, and at the same time, talking about it not in a blaming way, and asking your partners to bring to you, if they're able to bring more gentleness, ask you specific things. It will really help me if you let me know if you can't answer my call. Just let me know that you're okay and you'll get back to me later. That's our specific request. Sometimes your partner doesn't even know that's what they need to do in order to soothe your anxiety. So really asking for specific things and learning about what are your specific needs, and then communicating it in a non-demanding but more like gentle way can go a long way.
Yeah, and I think there's another step to that too, where once you ask for it and then they try to give it to you, it may not be in their capacity to give it to you. So you might get into this feeling, like, I asked you for this one little thing, you never. And so I think when you ask for something like that, you actually have to see if it's within your partner's capacity to give it to you. And if it's not, it doesn't mean that they don't love you or that they hate you or they're trying to torture you. It might just be like they have ADD or they're like not good at keeping track of time or something like that. So it's more like we try to maximize what's possible in terms of these soothing behaviors. And then we see what the capacity is on the other side. But if you expect certain capacities or certain abilities that your partner doesn't actually have, you will become very disappointed and enraged. Or you can say, okay, so I asked for that. We tried a few times. I asked a number of times. Turns out that's not within their capacity. So what's something else that we can do to handle this, right? Like you have to keep flexible and open and be willing to see the changes in capacity. I do want to answer this other question too. How do you not fall into the blah, blah, blah day-to-day routine and keep intimacy new? So I think there's emotional intimacy and erotic intimacy. So I want to answer this for both. I think what we're talking about right now has a lot to do with emotional intimacy. I think the way that you don't make your relationship blah, 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 is you actually keep talking about who you are and being vulnerable in a deeper way. I think with so many relationships, we try so hard to maintain the structure that we start tiptoeing around each other, not really saying who we are and how we feel, not really asking for what we want, or asking for it once and then saying, "Look, that seemed to agitate my partner. I guess I'll never talk about that again." We try to like not make any waves. And this, I think, is what really sterilizes relationship. It really shuts down the possibility for transformation and growth, because we're just trying to maintain a connection. I think when it comes to erotic intimacy, because you said something about fantasy, the first conversation that we want to have around our erotic intimacy is like who we are as erotic beings. And in that conversation, we actually need to be open to the possibility that the other person's fantasies are completely different than ours. We might not be able to meet all of each other's fantasies, but we can at least accept each other's fantasies. And even better, if possible, celebrate each other's fantasies, even if we can't meet them. That is also part of intimacy. And then we see, okay, so what needs are able to be met in the relationship, which ones aren't, and then how do we handle that? We talk a lot about that in our book, Making Love Real, how to maximize all of the possibilities, and then what to do with the needs if they don't actually get met, because there's a lot of things. There's outsourcing, there's dealing with your disappointment in a loving, supportive way and saying, okay, I guess I will live without that, but I do want it to be accepted or seen in the relationship. And sometimes people actually do need to leave each other as a result of there not being enough needs met within the structure of the relationship, if it's not possible to open it or something like that. So we really just try to help people get clarity about that, help accept each other, try to find like how they can match their fantasies, become more compatible, get creative around it, and then what to do if it's not possible to get those needs met within the structure of the relationship.
So I'm going to respond to these two questions here at the same time, because it is true. Like I see so many couples, and when there's a conflict, there's no way that a relationship won't have conflicts. Two or more people, children, like a household, trying to navigate day-to-day life. There's no way on the planet that people will be in agreement all the time. It's just impossible. And then when people experience this conflict, the experience of agitation or their partner's response, and it's amazing when I do couple sessions, I'm like really sharp in getting what's getting between them. But sometimes their reaction to each other is so intense that I was like, what just happened? Like someone just flinched and the other person is already like at a trigger 9 and the trigger. So I was like, oh, what just happened? I missed the whole moment here. So people that live together and spend time together and rely on each other for the attachment needs and their sexual needs, or not their sexual needs, their attachment needs, or just their sexual needs. There's a requirement, there's a longing, there's a desire to be seen, and there's fear from conflict. But these conflicts are just opportunities. And I know it sounds so simple, and I know it's way more difficult in real life. So I'm not pretending that it is simple. But the more we're able to look at those conflicts as an opportunity to gain more intimacy, to see more, oh, wow, they really didn't like that. It was really important to me. How do we negotiate those differences? And instead of giving up, and each of you going to your corner or like trying to get something from the other person, if you're more of a wavy type, just starting to maybe take a moment and regroup, recover, get yourself off the ledge of the trigger, and then come back and say, when that happened before, I wonder what happened. Move with empathy, move in with inquiry and curiosity. And that can create and then being willing to be vulnerable and share your feelings. That's what I felt when that happened. I wonder what was going on for you. And like coming with this curiosity and gentleness can go such a long way.
So thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see more of you in the training so that we can have much more connection and interaction with you in the future. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes. And if you like this video, like us on Facebook and ring this bell on YouTube. And we can't wait to see more of you.